Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bobby Lauer, and I am the Executive Director for the Coalition of Urban and Metropolitan Universities. I'm looking at the list right now, and it looks like people are actively joining the webinar. So far, we have 44 people online, but we're expecting over 80 plus registrants, which we're so excited about. So we want to say thank you to everyone for taking an hour out of your day to spend with us on this very important topic. Today, I'm going to be joined by a number of experts in the anchor field, and I'm going to turn it over to them in just 1 minute. But I did want to let you know that participating today in our webinar are actually over 40 different CUMU members, which represents almost 50% of the coalition. And that really helps reinforce for us how important of a priority this anchor work is. So we are so excited to be working hand in hand with a wonderful organization that many of you already know out of DC, the Democracy Collaborative, and having them work with us to bring a lot of technical assistance and expertise to the CUMU membership. So we have a lot on the agenda today and some amazing speakers, and we want to get started right away. So I'm going to be turning it over to my colleague, Emily Slottick, who is going to take it from here.
Hi, so you should hear me all. And there, and now I can advance the screen. This is great. So welcome, and I just wanted to second what Bobby said. We're really excited to be here. As you might know, I and the other panelists, along with a few other universities, have been working on this anchor mission work with the anchor dashboard mindset in mind for the last number of 3 or 4 years. So we're really excited to share this more with CUMU members. And I am joined on the panel today with Jen Britton from Drexel University, Carl Gunther from the University of St. Louis, Missouri, and Julian Rogers from Cleveland State, and I am from the Democracy Collaborative. As a brief overview of what we're working on today, it's really an overview. We are hoping that you are either really familiar with the anchor mission and wanting to learn more. We hope to have a great conversation with you. Also, if you're new to the anchor mission, this is a great place. We're going to be spending the next hour looking over what the anchor mission means, as well as inclusive hiring and purchasing policies, and kind of finishing off with place-based investing in real estate. If there are more topics that you want to delve into more deeply, there will be an evaluation that's sent out later today. We hope you fill that out, and we'll base our future webinars on that. Lastly, we hope to set aside 20 minutes at the end for question and answers. So we hope to be through kind of this initial sharing of case studies and theory with you by 1:30. And so we'll have a lot of time for question and answers. While we talk, if a question comes up, if you can type that into chat, we'll make sure that gets addressed during our question and answer. Great. So the Democracy Collaborative is what you call a think and do tank. And as Bobby said, we're located in Washington, D.C. We also have an office in Cleveland, Ohio. And we really work on alternative economic development approaches that can address the inequalities in our communities. So this inserting community into the field of economic development with a focus on assets as a way of producing better outcomes, social and economic outcomes is new. And we are intentionally focusing on place-based work and uniting anchor institutions with the community to build community wealth. So these definitions of anchor institutions and community wealth is something that you're going to hear from me about throughout the day. First, anchor institutions, as we define them, are nonprofit institutions, often with a public mission. They are rooted in the community and not going to leave. So things like local governments, universities, hospitals, community foundations, as well as utility providers or museums are all considered anchor institutions. By aligning your economic development such as your supply chain purchases, hiring and investing with these institutions, you can create a more stable economy from which to build community wealth. So community wealth, if you draw your eyes down to the bottom circle, is really about looking at higher ed to more intentionally align their assets with their local community. Anchors play a role in ensuring the survival and sustainability of small business, and especially businesses that broaden ownership opportunities. Broader ownership opportunities increase individual wealth by creating equity and generational assets. Anchor activities like hire, buy, and invest local programs helps to create a whole ecosystem from which to continue to build wealth and local ownership. Higher education is well positioned to do this work. Not only do we have vast amounts of research power and innovation capacity, we hire 4 million people nationally, spend over $43 billion on goods and services each year, and we hold $515 billion in endowments. So when we think about the Anchor mission, we're really looking to unite all parts of the campus. It is a way to take our business and operations along with our intellectual and human capital to join in a mutually beneficial relationship with our community. This is well conceived in Cleveland, where there is a model relationship between the anchor institutions and worker-owned businesses. It connects the eds and the meds with employee-owned businesses, as well as the community foundation, local government, and it supports nonprofit intermediaries that can help build local capacity and be another investment arm. When we think about how this model relates to higher education's public mission, it's at its forefront. If we think about the public mission of higher ed, it's around workforce development, creating new knowledge, and creating lifelong civic participation amongst our students and local community. So when we think about the wicked problems that sometimes higher ed is drawn to address, we can better link the anchor mission with community engagement through looking at teaching and learning practices that can also support economic development. This can look like having your human resources department have job fairs in a way that also engages students that are practicing management opportunities as well as volunteer. And this is really seen in our work with the Anchor Dashboard Learning Cohort. We started with the Anchor institution thinking that they would have a big impact on the future of higher education, but we needed to measure that impact. This cohort started in 2015, meeting regularly twice a year to collect data. From collecting that data, they formed internal committees to talk about the challenges and issues they were facing. They developed the Anchor mission into their strategic plans. They are slowly looking at changing the culture on their campus, that teaching and learning and back-end functions are connected to and can transform higher education. This is also seen through the Anchor mission framework. We drafted this framework to show the many assets a university has to support their surrounding communities. Whether there are obviously outward-facing functions and departments, they are traditionally thought of in silos and as unrelated. Our goal is to integrate all functions, including business activities, to support underserved communities and advance equity and inclusion. This is not separate from what you are doing now, but connected to the overall public-facing mission of the university. Students, faculty, and staff will begin to work together across the institution and identify common goals with community partners, helping to strengthen the public mission of higher education. With that, we are now going to transition to the case studies. We have 3 members of the Anchor dashboard with us today. Drexel and UMSL will both give a private and public school look at hiring and purchasing policies. Cleveland State will look more at real estate investment and development. To begin with, I will go over the kind of key strategies that you can begin to think of. So for inclusive hiring, you can think of it as in terms of that location and neighborhood are important to engage in this work. It provides better connections to hard to employ people. We do this through recruiting more employees from our local communities, as well as advancement opportunities once they're hired. Programs like retirement assistance, housing assistance, and tuition assistance can help create pipelines to recruit and maintain employees from your local communities. Opportunities also exist for higher education to further their workforce development goals by creating common job descriptions and supported pipelines for many of the different anchors in your area that have the same types of jobs. For local and inclusive sourcing, we are looking at creating connections between intermediaries that can help build and connect small businesses to anchors, as well as let small businesses know about online platforms that exist locally within their state and for their sector that can better match them with contracts at your university. For building capacity, we are looking at reducing large contracts down to more manageable size that can include more small businesses in the bid. We also look at mentorship programs that you can partner your higher large businesses with your smaller businesses so that they can slowly grow their capacity and formalize their business operations. Drexel, you are going to share with us some of what you've been working on. So Jen Britton is at Drexel University. Please share with us when you're ready.
Hi, Emily, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm sorry for flipping the slides a little too quickly there. I'm going to
Jen.
Hi.
Jen, can you hear me?
Hi, Emily, I can hear you. I was going into mute and unmute.
I can't hear you. Okay, there you go. You should be able to go now.
Great, okay. Sorry, everybody. So I'm going to talk about how Drexel is aligning its systems and our processes to do locally focused hiring and procurement. Starting with our hire local strategy. Our goal here is, again, thinking at the systems level to build and share a process that makes hiring local residents an attractive option for our departments and offices through the university. In the end, with our anchor mission, we're looking for a mutual benefit between Drexel and surrounding communities. As we invest in the local economy, we also have to have a payoff for the university. When we talk about local hiring and procurement, that often comes in the form of cost savings. Emily, my screen is kind of flipping around a lot. There we go. So in fact, I need the strategy and impact screen.
Jen, I will take back control and you can just tell the slide.
That would be great. Sorry, everybody.
So this is your buy local. Are you at hire local, right?
We're on hire local. Yep, there we go.
Here's your hire local screen. Oh.
Is everybody dizzy now? So anyway, so I just mentioned about the notion of mutual benefit. And that it's actually that topic where we start our conversation with our VP level leadership as we sort of build this process. As an example, when we talk about the hire local strategy, by taking advantage of, for example, federal workforce dollars, by reducing turnover, by reducing payments to temporary agencies, by being able to build towards preferred vendor contracts with favorable pricing, we can lower costs for our departments and our colleagues. Each of these areas is data-driven for us. In higher local, we use data to learn about what positions in our university were experiencing high turnover, which therefore are opportunities for plugging in a sort of on-the-job training program and doing some problem solving. We also took a look at the local workforce. What is the average educational attainment level in our surrounding communities? What jobs are the university's neighbors applying for, and what qualifications are they bringing to their applications? Understanding how these data points overlap in terms of higher local guided us in terms of our program build out. One example I will share is a cohort-based on-the-job training program that we put together in cooperation with a local workforce and intermediary. We learned that through our data analysis that we had a high turnover among medical assistants in our medical practices, and high turnover costs money. We also learned that there are a lot of unemployed medical assistants in West Philadelphia who are struggling with what was a shortcoming in their training. Most of the MA jobs in the region require up to a year of practical experience, but a lot of the for-profit certification schools in our city are graduating medical assistant certificate holders with just 12 weeks of practical training. So we worked with the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative, who know the local workforce capacity very well. They have plenty of experience customizing on-the-job training programs. And at this point, we've done 3 medical assistant training cohorts. These are 6-month programs that start with our medical practices commitment to hire, which is a really important piece of that. The training includes a combination of classroom time, it's training on proprietary software, practical skills training, you know, for medical assistants. They learn how to do a blood draw before they start their jobs. And then we're gradually stepping up time in the medical practices. Through this program, because we could take advantage of federal workforce dollars, it means there's an initial payroll savings for the practices right up top. And by reducing their turnover, it helps them with an existing problem. With the medical assistant cohorts, we continue to offer coaching and support with the expectation that we want our new employees to find a career path with us. One other piece I'm going to mention around the topic of higher local is the notion that I indicate in the slide around programmatic bridges. In the neighborhoods next to Drexel's University City campus in Philadelphia, a lot of adults have not completed a high school diploma. Literacy levels are often at a 4th grade level. And you can't get a job at Drexel, and for the most part, not with our major vendors either, without a high school diploma. So we established an adult education program in our neighborhood resource center called the Dornsife Center for Neighborhood Partnerships. And we use that program to help residents get up to speed with digital literacy and access, which is to say the tools you need for a job search and a job application. We provide a high school completion program with Goodwill Industries, which is very good at that kind of thing. And we also have one of our folks from Drexel's Human Resources there in the neighborhood once a week, offering direct assistance to neighbors, direct assistance with jobs access, writing resumes, filling out applications, and so on. So the impact here with our local hire strategy is largely pretty sort of easy to imagine and to measure. I'm offering 2 nuggets here. One is that we're putting a substantial amount of salary dollars into West Philadelphia, and that number is gradually increasing each year. But just as importantly, our local hires are increasingly taking advantage of tuition remission benefits, which is an opportunity to not just put people into jobs, but to create career pathways with opportunities for advancement. You can go ahead and advance the slide, Emily. I want to go on to buy local. I'll talk just a little bit about this strategy. So the way we see it, Drexel itself creates local jobs, which I just talked about. But when we can spend the money that we have to spend anyway with local suppliers and vendors, it means they can also create jobs. Like with the higher local priority, buy local is also a data-driven process. We ran the numbers to analyze two major things. What do we buy? Our commodities and services, lettuce, architectural services, paper, office supplies, lab supplies, and so on. And what's for sale locally? Where can we create a match with those things? And that's where we start to cultivate relationships with local vendors. Emily, do you want to advance the slide to just show the strategy and impact slide? Yep. If I had to sum up our process with vendor onboarding, I would say it's all about transparent information. It's about setting reasonable expectations, and it's working to support new and smaller local vendors as they build towards being able to supply bigger and more frequent orders with the goal of being able to loop them into a preferred contract situation. When we talk about at Drexel, moving a buy local strategy into policy, the thing that makes it sustainable, it means we're, as an example, writing expectations into our construction RFPs for local procurement. We are increasingly asking our departments to work with us to look for opportunities to direct their spend locally as well. A couple of just as example areas of focus where we ran those numbers in terms of what we need to buy and what we can buy locally. The match in terms of what Drexel spends on and what goods and services are available are things like promotional items, t-shirts and branded water bottles, contracted services like small landscaping projects, clean out services, and other kinds of contracted professional services like architectural contracts and so on, just to sort of give you an idea of the scope. We have a couple of images in this set of slides. Got Andrew Magnus, who is a local printing vendor who's on a mission essentially to use what he earns from Drexel contracts to hire local kids and get them into the printing industry. The other photo is of a locally designed lab facility. And our higher local, we have a couple of photos that sort of represent, there it is. A cohort at the top of our on-the-job medical assistant training program, one of our medical assistants, and then an admin staffer that we hired as a temp who became a full-time employee at Drexel. All right, thanks, Emily. I will look forward to hearing any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I know a lot of questions have been coming in from, telling us more about the federal funding as well as your tuition assistance programs. I thought we could give you time to collect your thoughts on that. And the question I have, and you could answer that more during our question and answer session. For right now, I wondered if you could just talk more about the process of who signed on for you to start this work at Drexel, from starting to collect data to resourcing and implementing programming.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of getting our internal buy-in, we were pretty lucky at Drexel in that we started out with a new president in 2010 who said, we are going to be civically engaged. All units should be pursuing this mission. And so that let my office, the Office of University and Community Partnerships, approach some of our VPs. And, we ended up kind of already having that mandate in our pockets when we went to the VPs and said, hey, we can support you guys in this mission. And then it was the VPs who gave us the go-ahead to work with their staff to begin that data analysis.
Great, thank you, Jen. And again, I know there'll be more to come from you.
Yeah.
So Carl is now going to take over our presentation duties. Carl, you should now be able to advance the screens.
Thank you, Emily. So first, I just want to say that UMSL's been really grateful to be a part of the Anchor Dashboard Learning Cohort and learning cohorts like the Higher Education Anchor Mission Initiative. is going to be. We've been able to learn a lot from institutions like Drexel that have tackled many of these anchor institution issues. We at UMSL, our journey is very much one of moving from data to action, and we are in the early stages of defining and rolling out our own local hiring and procurement efforts at the university. We have done a couple things to start out, and really I'm trying to focus on things that are the early steps that we're taking, while Drexel kind of has laid out a great roadmap for the long journey. But we set out to do a few key things. One was that we needed to analyze our hiring and procurement. And so we've been able to do that with our HR director and figuring out what are those jobs. And we looked over 3 years to figure out which jobs we do the most hiring in. And now that will begin to let us look at what are the job skills associated with those positions. We also were able to work with our food provider to do the same type of analysis, and need to look at the ways in which we will build the partnerships and market those jobs in our local community. The second thing is that we also began to try to do some of those smaller contract and local contract work with landscaping companies. And this was a chance to deploy one of those anchor strategies that Emily talked about, was using smaller contracts to get folks into the university ecosystem. And it works out well for us because oftentimes they can be quicker on the job and be able to handle some discrete landscaping needs that we've had over the past months. And so it's been a very nice relationship that's helped us be more responsive to our facilities needs, as well as building new partnerships and new relationships in the business community. And then third, we are trying to reach out to other institutions near us, a few corporations and a hospital that are around us in North St. Louis County, to begin conversations around whether or not we could do some of this local and hiring collectively and in a coordinated fashion. All of this is to say that we are early in this journey, but indicators that have been settled on in the anchor dashboard effort that Emily mentioned, like unemployment rate in our community, are things we would hope to be able to have some hand in lowering the 20% plus unemployment rate around UMSL. And another impact that has happened through this process is we began with creating a university leadership governance committee to oversee the data collection of community indicators and university institutional effort indicators. But through that process, leaders like our CFO and our provost and others have really gotten in the game. And the CFO was the one really that kind of paved the way for our small landscape contracts initiative to get off the ground. And so I would just say that while we're earlier in our journey, the benefits of our university leadership really coming around this type of work and some of the early steps that we've taken have been really encouraging for the type of impact and initiatives we think are going to be possible in our community. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Carl, for offering that. It has been really exciting to see the members of the Anchor Dashboard continue to talk to people at their campuses about how to further this work. You at UMSL, I know, form those anchor committees, and I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about those initial conversations with the CFO or HR director that moved them to get on board with the anchor mission, and to where now they're readily trying to create goals around it.
Yeah, so certainly. I mean, our work, like I said, I think when we got involved with the learning cohort, it really created an opportunity for us to bring our university leadership together, to have conversations about what role we can play in society and specifically in the communities right around us. And the dean of our business school was an early adopter and really keen on this work, and he helped make connections with our CFO to help us get the kind of procurement data we needed to do the analysis around our purchasing. And that through that conversation, he had ideas like what we have begun to implement. And since that time, we've really codified the governance and strategic governance of our anchor work in what we call UMSL's Anchor Institution Committee. And the CFO now sits on that committee along with other leaders across the university, from our chancellor to our provost to other deans and folks in marketing and community engagement and facilities. And so it really has created a great table for us to think strategically together, make some directional choices, and get to work.
Great, thanks, Carl. And so next, we are going to move on to place-based investing. And this is also what part of real estate is. As we look at all the assets that a university has, they can make choices about where they deposit their money and invest. So some options around money assets is that you can build partnerships with local banks and CDFIs, or also known as community development financial institutions. These financial institutions are mission driven to serve low-income communities. So by putting more of your deposits with those local banks, it'll increase the local lending capacity that they can do. You can also invest in local nonprofit organizations, for instance, nonprofit housing developers or small business incubators that can, again, along with other anchors and community foundations, create a stronger ecosystem for supporting small businesses. And as real estate assets, you can engage your facilities department to have and create a more opportunities for residents to stay and live local by intentionally planning real estate development along with community residents, so that the university is again aligning its whole goals and institutional priorities with the needs of the local community. So Julian from Cleveland State is going to share with us a little bit more about what this might look like on your community, in your communities. And Julian, you should be able to advance the slide now. And let me also try to unmute you here.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, great.
There we go. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Julian Rogers, and I'm with Cleveland State University. We are a mid-sized research university of about 17,000 students, and we're located just on the edge of downtown Cleveland. So for the past 10 years, our downtown has really experienced a renaissance with over $6 billion worth of new investment. And this has led to a 78% overall growth in our population downtown, going from 6,500 people in 1990 to being on track to having 23,000 residents in downtown by 2020. There have been drastic increases in the number of children living downtown as well, with a 134% increase of those 0 to 5-year-olds and a 200% increase of those 5 to 9-year-olds. And this has contributed to a 98% occupancy rate for downtown Cleveland. We can't build housing fast enough. Cleveland State has primarily been a commuter campus since its inception in 1964. But as a result of the resurgence of downtown living, more students and faculty and staff are looking to live on or near our campus, especially in some affordable housing, which is not easy to come by. So I'd like to talk about a couple of projects that that we have underway here. Sorry, my phone just rang. So the first one is Sankofa Village. And Sankofa Village is located in the central neighborhood of Cleveland, less than 1 mile south from the Cleveland State campus and directly across the street from Cuyahoga Community College, which is our regional community college. The new $23 million, 15-acre, 101 unit mixed income housing development was developed by the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, which is our local public housing organization. Now, Central is a economically distressed neighborhood in Cleveland, and this development is really helping to bring new life to this area. Let me go back. If you look at our map here, you'll see right in the middle is the CSU campus, and just to the south is the Cedar Central community, and that's where the new development is. Cleveland State is offered to pay the first month's rent of up to $1,000 for any faculty or staff that are interested in living there. The rent starts at $650 for a 1-bedroom and goes up to $1,200 for a 3-bedroom. So that's pretty significant. We're yet to see any early adopters among our faculty. However, many students are living in Sankofa Village right now. They're also moving toward phase 3 of the project, which will add an additional 100 to 150 units. So we're very hopeful that we'll have some faculty and staff taking part of that, that project. Our commitment to this project was aided by the Campus District Incorporated, which is our local community development corporation. And that corporation was founded by the 3 anchor institutions in the district, which include Cleveland State University, Cuyahoga Community College, and St. Vincent Charity Hospital, which is also in the central neighborhood. The Campus District serves as kind of a connecting agent for these 3 institutions, as well as the businesses and residents in the area. And the head of the housing authority that initiated the project, the Sankofa project, is on the Campus District board. So there are 2 other projects that I'd like to share. Excuse me. If you can go, yeah, leave it there. One is Campus International. And these projects are something that's really, that we've partnered with either other institutions or private developers to help build and develop the neighborhood around our campus for both mutual benefit for both us and our partners. So the first one is Campus International, which is the K-8 high-performing public school on the CSU campus. This opened, it opened a brand new building this school year after operating out of another CSU building for several years. The building now houses, that old building now houses the Campus International High School. So we're going to have a continuum of service from K through 12 at the end of another 3 years. So this new school is the only K-8 school in downtown Cleveland. And the enrollment is determined by lottery. However, the first 21% of the seats are assigned to students who have a full-time affiliation with Cleveland State. So that either means you're a full-time student, full-time faculty, or full-time staff. You get an advantage in the lottery. So we're very proud. The Cleveland State has given a 50-year long-term lease to the school district to build on the property. And as a result, as you can look on the picture on the far right, is the new school building, which has gone up in an area of town that has been very depressed, and there's been little activity. And so we've really helped to revitalize that area of town and put some more people walking on the streets. Our campus police also patrols the area. The other one is the Langston, which is a student housing project whereby the university leased land to a private developer. And essentially we wanted to provide more student housing, but weren't interested in getting in the business of building more dorms. So this provided us an opportunity to give a very great deal to a developer to come in and put 318 units of housing for our students. And there are some faculty and staff that are also living in the Langston. But this is, the Langston was one of the first developments in downtown Cleveland under this new kind of rebirth of housing in downtown. So this kind of set the stage for what we're witnessing here in Cleveland now. So, you know, some of the, if I can go to the last slide. So some of the things that we've been doing is providing incentives for our faculty and staff to live nearby, providing incentives for developers and our partners in the school districts to actually make use of property that we're not currently using. And it's really helped to increase safety in the neighborhood. We've had new businesses sprout up, as you can imagine, with all the new foot traffic. We have lots of new small businesses that have opted to open up here. And we also have more opportunities for students that are looking for a true campus experience of living on campus. We're able to provide them that opportunity.
Great. Julian, that's really helpful. We've gotten a few questions for you around gentrification, or maybe the concern about displacement. So I was wondering if you could talk about how participants are maybe dealing with or thinking through how the rent might serve as a stabilizing force. And so that more people are able to live there long term.
Sure. So with Sankofa, you know, that was a public housing complex before, and many of the residents that lived there before the remodel are actually living there now. I believe they had a seniority system on how those units were divvied up. The density is a lot more in the new area in Sankofa Village, so it's able to accommodate many more people living in the same amount of area. And seeing that this was being done by our housing authority, they've been very clear that anyone that's no longer there has a place to go within the community. The other two places were actually on, the Langston was on vacant property, so there was actually no displacement there. And the school is actually helping to make the downtown area a much more family-friendly living environment.
Thanks, Julian.
Mm-hmm.
We are now kind of at our question and answer stage. So we're going to kind of go through and answer some of the questions that have come up during the webinar. In the background, we wanted to give just more information about the different key strategies that you can utilize. So as the questions happen, there'll be more information available on the screen. So the first question is Drexel, can you elaborate more on federal funds and how they've been used to support local hiring?
Sure. So the important point that I want to make on the federal funds is that this is best done with your local workforce development intermediary agency. Pretty sure that most, sort of regions, counties, city, certainly major cities have these. And these are the experts at deploying those funds. So there's federal labor department funding for different sorts of jobs access and training opportunities. And so what and it gets sort of filtered sometimes directly from the Department of Labor, sometimes through city, county, and state level sort of labor support agencies. And that money then kind of goes out to these workforce intermediaries. For us, it's the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative. And they're better equipped than we are to sort of deploy that money. So we work directly with them in terms of customizing the on-the-job training programs and then delivering the training. So it is a kind of a 50-50 effort. So hopefully that makes sense. We're talking about generally U.S. Department of Labor funding. But you'd want to work with your local intermediary agency on that.
Thanks, Jen. And I know that you have also utilized other mediaries for kind of helping to direct, and I think about hiring or procurement. And I think that's one of the strategies we've seen kind of come up in this work overall, is that the institution can look at sourcing these, for instance, hiring someone to just focus on local procurement, or they can also work with a local nonprofit agency that can really help look at doing that matchmaking, or in the case that you just mentioned, Jen, those kind of hiring supports.
Yep. Yeah, and Emily, in terms of just a really quick example in our procurement, when we wanted to know who is selling what we need to buy locally, we worked with Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation, which is the sort of business development agency in our region.
Good. And we're also, and this can maybe be a question to everyone, but some questions around how are we doing with institutionalizing this work? So is there staff time to kind of help staff learn about this work? Right, are there campus events that you're hosting that help institutionalize or socialize the anchor mission? And I would say also to that, what have been the challenges in communicating or trying to get this message across at your institutions?
Emily, this is Jen again. I can take the sort of a first part of that question on one example of institutionalization. So we have at Drexel created a interdepartmental committee that upon which sits some of the leadership of the divisions around facilities, purchasing and procurement, campus services, and human resources. And they get together quarterly, and sort of going back to how we are very data driven, but they're getting together quarterly to talk about what the results have been, how performance is going. And in that way, that's sort of one mechanism we're using to not just kind of keep us on track with some of our performance goals, but to really bake this work into the DNA of these parts of the university.
Good, and would anybody else like to answer that?
I can say that here at Cleveland State, we've created what we're calling the Anchor Institution Task Force, which is made up of a number of different college deans from different colleges, as well as central office staff and our faculty representatives. And we're meeting, we've been meeting regularly and are in the process now of analyzing survey results. And we plan to use those results to help identify what our actual anchor mission will be. And in that, I mean, we'll be identifying what are the 3 or 4 key areas that as an institution, we should be focusing on moving the needle as it relates to our surrounding community. So we've been, this committee was created about 8 months ago, and we're in the midst of this month having to, next month in May, developing a report on our recommendations of what the anchor mission should be.
Thanks, Julian. We keep having questions come in, so this is great. Other questions that have come up is kind of how are we including community in our work? So have we developed avenues for participation, or have we run into any concerns from them that have arisen that we're trying to better incorporate?
This is Carl at UMSL. A couple tactics and strategies that we've used, and we still are evolving this, but we did a series of focus groups throughout this process to help us better understand how different folks, municipal leaders, business, community, and residents think about the university, want to partner with the university, engage with the university. We also hold, and the chancellor holds 3 times a year community meetings, and those are a great opportunity for us to have back and forth with community members and hear what's on their minds, as well as think through some of what are some pressing points that we could go to work on.
I can chime into this one as well, Emily. So at Drexel, one of the most important parts of our strategy is having established the Dornsife Center for Neighborhood Partnerships, which is kind of our private university version of an extension center. And one of the most important functions there is that it's it is a location in one of our contiguous neighborhoods where we play out a lot of the especially the local hire pieces. So we have an open lab there. That's where we do high school diploma completion programs, HR assistance. It's where we cite the classroom portions of our on-the-job training programs. And so there is that function of it, but the Dornsife Center also has a community advisory council that is one of the mechanisms by which Drexel can pretty regularly communicate with neighbors and especially with neighborhood leaders.
That's exciting to hear about. There's also been some questions that have come in around how do you define local, and so this might connect a little bit to our community question, but how did each institution define local, and how did that definition influence how you work with community and or your hire by invest local strategy?
So this is Julian with Cleveland State. We opted to use the borders that were already established through the Campus District Incorporated, which is our local community development corporation. And in the map that was shown earlier, that kind of outlined our borders. And we figured this was a good opportunity because there are 2 other anchor institutions that are part of the campus district. So we saw this as an opportunity to be able to share information with them and also partner with them on this initiative.
So at Drexel, and this is Jen again, we started, we are a densely populated city location. So we kind of started thinking about our zip code, 19104. But that is also a fairly small footprint. So for things like when we talk about hiring and procurement strategies, we're looking at, in a lot of cases, all of West Philadelphia. this sort of entire quadrant of the city. Several years ago, Drexel also was part of a collaboration around getting one of the Obama administration Promise Zone designations, and that has ended up acting like a natural kind of geographic footprint for us as well. And so right now, a lot of our programming, our academic programming, these kinds of operations side partnerships, we are using the boundaries of the Promise Zone to inform the geography of those.
That's a really helpful connection to make along with the Promise Zones and also the Choice Program. So there's another question that just came in related to local. How would you affirm that a business is local? Would a Starbucks, for instance, be local?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think for us, we are looking for, our first line of inquiry is local ownership, and Starbucks doesn't really meet that definition. But the thing is that, a chain like Starbucks, or in our case, an international food service provider, Sodexo or Aramark, they may not be owned locally, but we are definitely going to work with them on placing, getting local residents into jobs with them, for example. So, we're not going to be, doing business development assistance with Aramark, but we're going to definitely partner with them on some HR strategies.
And we're kind of at our last question, and it's going to be multi, so we'll see how we can handle it here. We got about 2 minutes for it. Or maybe even less than that. But so when thinking about involving students in this work, where has that shown up? For instance, so maybe we'll just keep it there. Where has students shown up in this work? Either with tuition assistance or high school if you don't have any kind of undergraduate options.
So I mentioned we had done some focus groups with different segments of the community around campus. And we heavily involved with student support in that, and worked with a summer intern on that process to really craft and help us deliver on the formation and development of those focus groups. And so there are ways like that where in getting the work done, engaging with folks, the student experience can be woven into some of these institutional goals.
Emily, I can jump in on that one as well. We've had a couple of ways at Drexel where we've engaged students. So one example through academics, we had a business college class do, as a hands-on class project, did a local spend feasibility study with us. So we asked the question, we're working on how the university is buying lettuce and lab supplies. Where are the students spending their money? And so a business class did a study on that for us. And then we were able to follow that up with a co-op position. Drexel is a co-op school, and we had a co-op student who then kind of took some of the recommendations out of that feasibility study and worked directly with local retailers to help them with business planning around some of the recommendations for getting students to spend money with local businesses. And we also have co-op students who support our adult education, digital literacy programming as well. So that's just two examples.
Yeah, great. We're going to have to leave it there, but there's so many future opportunities that we hope to keep talking with you about. We are at that time for next steps. So again, there's going to be an evaluation form that comes out at the end of today. Please fill it out. Future webinars will be based on it. Our next webinar will be announced after July 1st. And if your university is a member of the Higher Education Anchor Admission Initiative, we will be sending out a further email with you on Thursday, and look forward to that contact. Also, and I think Bobby Lahr is going to join us for the last 30 seconds or so, but I wanted to remind you about the Kumu Annual Conference in Chicago. Please save the date. She has a very exciting announcement that over 180 proposals have been submitted for the conference this year. So it's very exciting to be part of this as higher ed continues to think about how to be great urban and metropolitan universities in the communities they serve. Bobby, do you want to say anything else?
Yes, thank you so much, Emily, for leading us down this discussion today. And I want to particularly thank Jen and Julian and Carl and someone who was behind the scenes, Katie, who was responding to many of the questions coming in through chat. We're really appreciative of the excitement and energy that people showed and showing up for today's webinar, the number of questions that were coming into us as panelists. And I just wanted to reinforce, as Emily said, the conference, many of you on this call, I know have submitted proposals. The system reached its capacity, so we had to deal with that today. Over 180 proposals came in, so we're very excited. The only thing I did want to mention here is that we're still seeking reviewers. So if you're on the webinar and you're interested in being a reviewer, I know all of you know how to reach me, but if you don't, it's blaur@kumuonline.org, and I'm interested in capturing anyone who would like to be a reviewer for the call for proposals. So we're going to leave it there. And as Emily said, we just want to reinforce, we will be emailing out today the recorded version of this webinar so that you can revisit the presentation as well as share with colleagues. And we will also be sending the evaluation that will be a strong basis for how we move forward. So we're going to end it there, but we want to thank you all so much for spending the time with us and for all the collective work you're doing in your communities. Thank you.